This is the Clockwork Percussion Podcast, and today I've got Mike Willson. Welcome.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to have you. Few bands, Shape Pitaki, Gardeners Logic, and then Big Monsta.
Yeah, those are the three longest standing ones for sure, yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
And then Map Studios and PCE.
Yeah, I own Maps, and then I'm working with PCE freelance for like almost 15 years.
Wow.
And I've been managing their backline department for going on 2 years.
Okay.
And then, freelance live engineer and drummer, and so I tour and do all that kind of stuff. So
Right on. How did you get started playing drums?
So I mean, I told you when I got here, I just grew up like literally, down the street from here.
Yeah.
So I was going to elementary school here in Costa Mesa, and nobody in my family is a musician at all. And I've like done a lot of research, and I'm like the only active musician in my entire family on both sides.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I just had a friend like growing up in elementary school, super young, and he had an older brother. I'm the oldest sibling in my family. It's me and my younger sister. So like having like an older dude friend growing up, you like look up to him and all that kind of stuff. And
Sure.
he played in drumline, and he always had a drum kit set up, and I was like, wow, that's pretty sick, and so I just was like, I think I kind of am like into this whole drum thing. So I told my parents, I think in like end of like third grade year of elementary school, like, I think I want to play drums. They're like, what? And I was like, can I get a drum kit? They're like, we don't know shit about doing that, like.
Yeah, please don't want to play drums.
And so basically, they were like, if you get straight A's on your report card or whatever, we'll get you a drum kit. And it's not like they were like doubting me, but it was like I just grew up with like, having to like work for what you want to do. And like my parents are very supportive. And
yeah.
So I did. And then they're like, shit. And they went to go like look at Mars Music at the time.
Oh, Mars.
Yeah. And look at drum kits, and they were like, oh man, like this ain't cheap.
Right.
And so they ended up, it's funny in hindsight, they got me as a very nice drum, but a Yamaha stage custom snare.
Oh, cool.
But it's like 10 inch, like 10 by like 4.
Oh, weird.
So now knowing a lot about drums, it was a side snare. It had a mount on it and everything, you know what I mean? Like it was like a little, it wasn't a piccolo, it was like a side snare kind of thing.
Yeah, a little firecracker.
Yeah. And they got me that, and they're like, cool, well, we can't afford lessons, so like just go do the school band. And like, so I walk in with this tiny little drum, and of course get like made fun of and all this, and So anyways, I was just like, after the first like semester or trimester, I don't know, what are elementary school semesters, trimester? I don't know. But yeah, did that in school band for like 2 of those. And I was like, screw this, man. I can't, these guys all suck. They just like, the band director, good dude, but he just like hated drums. Like he hated little kids learning how to play drums because they were just loud,
right?
No dynamics, and messing with his fucking clarinets. Sorry, can we cuss on this podcast?
Of course.
Okay. And it just wasn't like an environment to like breed a young drummer, in my opinion. And I recognized that really young. And I was like, I want a drum kit. I want to like play AC/DC. Like, come on. So my parents like, all right, if you do the straight A thing again, we'll like figure it out, So I did it again. I was like determined to do it, and then they're like, okay, let's not go to Mars Music. And so we went to West Coast Drum Center.
Nice.
And now, funny enough, I'm friends with Darren, who used to own it.
Yeah.
And I've told him this story too. And my dad went in all like playing it cool, but he's just like, give me the cheapest shit you got, And at the time, like West Coast Drum Center was like a really good drum shop, It's like they didn't have like cheap ass like CB stuff. Or, like, I don't know what are the brands now.
PDP and shit.
Stag. I didn't even exist then, It's in the 90s. So I ended up with this like OG like early 90s Pearl Export kit, and it was like full Nirvana sizes, like big deep ass rack tom and
5-piece or 4-piece.
It was 2 racks floor kick snare. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, well, here's the shells. And my dad's like, wait, what? Like, you have to get stand cymbals, dude. Like, shit. You know? And so anyways, he scrounged it together for me and got it for me. And I played that kit, man, until I still have it, but until I was like 14.
Wow.
Yeah, so from like 4th grade until, like when I graduated, I think like middle school or whatever, or into my freshman year of high school or whatever it was, you know, then I got like a Gretsch kit.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was kind of the whole journey of like, once I got the drum kit, I was just self-taught.
Okay.
Just, you know, I didn't have headphones. I just turned the boombox up as loud as I could with KLOS and like figure it out, you know. And then my mom had like an Offspring tape, and that was like really hard to figure out, like by yourself. You know, it's like super fast, like
for sure
punk stuff. So I just stuck with like AC/DC and just like nice and easy does it, man.
Okay. That's so cool about West Coast.
Yeah.
That's where I got my lessons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Joe Z.
Nice.
He rest in peace.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, West Coast Drums. That was an awesome shop.
Yeah, I was bummed when that went down. I was just like, wait, what? Like, what are we gonna do now?
Yeah, go to fucking Guitar Center.
I know. But anyways, that was a long-winded answer of how I started playing. But
no, that's great. So, what was your first band?
So yeah, I grew up here in Costa Mesa, and I had a friend at the time that like was like my only other friend who wasn't in band that like played music, and he played. I want to say he like only played bass, which was funny. Eventually we got him a guitar, but like it was just us two playing again the same kind of thing, like putting on whatever cassette our parents had or like whatever. So him and I never wrote any original music. We just like tried to stumble through basic like classic rock songs. And then I moved eventually, like in 5th grade into 6th grade year to Huntington, and I was in a middle school over there. And like very quickly I met my now bandmate Jimmy Hua from Big Monsta. We went to the same middle school. Same grade as my buddy Zach Webb as well, good friend of mine. And that would actually end up becoming Big Monsta down the road.
Okay.
But like by the end of the school year, we were like playing a talent show and actually like working on original music, and they were like ripping guitar players, and we had another buddy Kyle playing guitars. We had like 3 guitars, no vocals, all her too like too embarrassed to sing, you know. Yeah. And then we had our buddy Scott play bass, and yeah, man, it's funny. And like since then, a portion of that band, we actually went back to the middle school like 10 years later and played the talent show as like the headliner for like the kids and stuff. We got asked to do it. It wasn't us like swinging dick. Like, okay. We got asked to do it by like some of our former teachers that we still stayed close with and stuff. And
that's
like,
rad.
Yeah, it was like kind of fun, but that was like the first iteration of a band that like I still play with those people like and have been professionally for a while. Yeah.
What was the name?
I don't know. I honestly think we like joined the talent show and we didn't have a name, and we just told like the talent show committee or whatever they are, those teachers, like, we don't have a name. So I think they called us like the Classics or something stupid. Okay. And then eventually, like once we kind of got like out of middle school into high school, we like had more members join us called Smokestack. And then after that, it kind of turned into Smokestack kind of broke up, and then we got into a band called the Counter Regiment, which was members of Gardeners Logic. Okay. And that turned into Gardeners Logic, and then Jimmy left that band and then ended up doing Big Monsta with Zach, and then I came back into that band. So it's all like really incestual between Gardeners Logic and Big Monsta. And so like it was kind of like spread out of that once we graduated high school. Okay. And kind of been like, but honestly, since I was like 17, I've been like a hired gun for a bunch of other bands. So like I've been slutting it up for a while.
Well, drummers and bass players are the hardest to come by.
Yeah, and I always get a whole bunch of shit from my band members like, what bands are you in? I was like, guys, like, come on. Like,
what are you, my girlfriend?
Yeah, get out of here, But yeah, man, that's kind of the gist of it.
Okay, so we touched on your 3 bands and your 2 jobs, but let's dig into all that a little bit more. Shane came on the podcast like a month or two ago, and there's a new release coming out soon. I heard it. It's great.
Which one?
The both songs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really cool.
Nice.
Big Monsta just had a show. Unfortunately, I missed, but
it's a fun one.
What's going on with that?
We have 3 new singles lined up that are getting ready to drop. We dropped a single, Ghost, not too long ago. That's super fun. But Jimmy and I have like a fun yet complicated relationship with like recording music, and it kind of all started when he started Big Monsta, because him and I, we didn't have a falling out. It was just like one of those things where like we kind of like creatively and socially went different directions for like 2 years. And always like stayed in touch, but it was just like we weren't as like intensely working on music together. And anyways, like he had started working in his garage, like he got like a PreSonus kind of interface, or like I think he ended up getting a Motu eventually. And like, we all had shitty MacBooks and like GarageBand and trying to like figure out how to do this, And at the same time, I had started Maps, and I'd opened my first like commercial space. And so I always like reached out to my friends once I started this. I was just like, especially the guys like I grew up with who like helped, shape me into the musician I am. Like if you need help with anything, like whether it's like help with your rig in your garage, or like you want to come by the studio or whatever. And so basically Jimmy started showing me demos, and I was like, holy shit, dude, like this stuff is rad. But I already had like, we opened the studio when I was 19. Like that's when we got our first lease. And I just like already had super engineering brain with like gain structure and just like, making sure you're using the right mic and the right application. Just like the very like basic, like don't fuck up a good performance engineer brain. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like don't let the gear get in the way. Like just use the gear properly, and then like we could figure out the mixing and stuff kind of if, when the time comes with limited resources, So he started showing me stuff. I'm like, dude, this sounds crazy. Like, but he was using the wrong mics on the wrong things, and it sounded cool. And then it was like, shit was distorting everywhere. And I was like, oh man, this is kind of dope. But like, I feel like I need to help you like with more gear and stuff like that, and kind of like figure out how to take it to the next level. Like, just to like kind of let the music just breathe a little bit more, So like we had started kind of working together on the Big Monsta project. In that context, where like I had the studio, he didn't have any money, and I didn't want to charge one of my best friends. You know what I mean? So it's like, but I need to like be a business owner too already at this weird young age. So what I would do is like tell him like, hey man, I have my paying client is done at 8. I'm gonna leave all the mics up. It's ready to go. You have to show up at like 8 p.m. and I need to be out by midnight or whatever. And we would just like try to get shit done. Wow. You know what I mean? And then like I'd be burnt for my whole session all day, like going to college and all this kind of stuff. And
your ears had
just fried. Yeah. And like trying to like respectfully stay out of his music. And I didn't really know my role as like a producer yet. I was just trying to like operate the gear and like make sure nothing got fucked up, Yeah. And so anyways, our relationship has like grown like really intricately over the years, because we've always worked on music now that way, in that context, with like recording as a main tool to like communicate ideas. It's like very rarely that we like sit in the same room and like he shows me riff and then I play a drum part and then we talk about arrangement or talk about melody. Like it's like ideas are thrown on paper like in a piece of recording software, and then we kind of just like start hacking away that way, and then perform it, capture it the way we want to, and then kind of work at it that way. So at this point, again, another long-winded answer, I apologize, but as far as the releases go, it's kind of a fun thing for me, because now Jimmy's just like in this like ultra writing mode, to where he's like, man, I got this idea. Like he won't even show me the songs really, or show us the songs as a band. Like he'll just book studio time like when we're available, and just know that we've all collectively recorded so much music over the years. Like we don't have like studio anxiety. We don't like, we're just fortunate enough to like have a lot of hours in the studio to like, cool, this is what we're going to go do. And we could like stretch out, like explore some ideas, and then we get done with it. And we just like let Jimmy tinker and explore whatever other ideas he has. And then I'll usually get a call and be like, hey, it's time to mix. And then him and I will like, he'll have it like 90% there. And then we'll just like put the finishing touches on the mix.
Wow.
And then I'm like, cool. So how are we releasing this? And then there's another layer of like collaboration. I'm like, how should we do this? Should we do that? Should we do photos? Should we do artwork? Should we do, you know, are we going to tour it? Like,
yeah,
what are we going to do? So anyways, I don't know when this other shit's coming out because we're kind of stuck in that loop. But it's good. It's like, it's really, really exciting. We had a really good session, like 2 weeks ago. And, yeah, it was fun, man. It's just like, it's such a like beautiful relationship to like be able to record our own music at like a pretty high quality level, you know?
That's what it sounds like.
And like, you know, I feel like proud of like building the studio up to where it is now, where it's just like, I don't really have like big gear lust anymore. Like we don't have, you know, $12,000 compressors, but I've just like been really happy with what we've been able to accomplish with the gear I've curated over the years, and, you know, kind of go from there. So.
You know how to use it, so that's
still
figuring it out.
Still figuring it out.
Love the honesty.
No. It's like now it's just like, how can I like I blew up two fucking tube amps the other day because I was just like slamming them way too hard.
Ooh.
But it sounded so sick for like 4 hours, and finally there was like gone, and I was like, all right, well, at least this is a healthy enough business for me to just hire my amp guy to fucking repair him, and we'll do it again.
So Maps is in Fullerton. Do you go to that guy in Fullerton?
We actually use an amp guy named Kevin Nelson. He's in Garden Grove.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's cool to learn about Big Monsta. What about Gardeners Logic? What's going on with that band?
So Ian and I have been like super best buds since high school, and like each other's best men in our weddings and all that kind of stuff, you know, and just like I would say him and I are much more of like I hear the songs like at their infancy, and like I try my best to like help get that idea, you know, fully fleshed out and stuff. With Ian, it's really fun. That's like where our relationship's a little bit different, you know, like we'll spend a lot of time just him and I like working on tunes. But yeah, we have some stuff. We have some singles like kind of baked, ready to go. It's just a matter of like what we want to do for release and stuff. And since the beginning, like our rotation of band members has always been pretty like varied, but like we have the core group that we like call upon. So yeah, I think we're just kind of like, I mean, I've had 2 kids the past 2 years. So like Ian's like really awesome uncle and like sensitive to that. But I think, you know, he's also getting his degree right now to be a teacher. And so it's one of those things where we're still making music all the time. It's just like, do we release it and not support it? Or do we, you know what I mean? Like, what do we do?
Yeah.
But like, we're constantly like, you know, talking about new songs and recording and stuff. And earlier this year we had some really good sessions and brought some friends in that we hadn't recorded with in a long time, and had a couple shows. And yeah, it's good. It's just like kind of like nobody's stressed about it. It's just still like a creative outlet to be able to get some things going. And so yeah, I mean, that's
sick.
Yeah, it's cool.
Vince and I actually have the same birthday.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
July 1st?
That's it.
Boom.
Yep. Wow.
All right.
Yeah, you're a good friend. You know, your buddy's birthdays.
He's one of the few.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually booked my first show back at Detroit Bar.
That's how I met Vince, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when he was doing all that. And he told me a really good piece of advice that, in a way, I wish he hadn't, because it, like, I'll lose respect for a lot of musicians if they don't do this. But he was like, in an email after the show, I was just like, hey, thanks for having us. And he's like, yeah, you know, the rules kind of are you're there from doors till close and make friends with all the other bands.
Yeah.
They're your new best friends.
Yeah.
And now anytime I set up a show and like bands just come in and out, you know, before and after their set, I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, it's kind of a waste of time, you know?
I know. And that's kind of like the charm that, like, you know, Detroit Bar had in that era of like local music. And like now Vince being one of my like oldest friends, like, you know, we talk about it, and it's like, you can't really confidently do that anymore. Like you can't tell somebody that's like the expectation. Like there's gonna be all sorts of fucking bullshit around it.
Yeah, oh my
You
god,
know
I got work in the morning, or I got some fucking shit.
Or it's just like, I can't believe that like this guy who just books bands at this local club is marginalizing me. Like, you know what I mean? Like there'd be some sort of dramatic bullshit around it. You know what I mean? But like Detroit Bar kind of had this like no bullshit, like this is how we fucking do things.
Totally.
You know, mentality, and definitely like bred me into like who I am as far as like a local musician that wants to support the community. And
yeah,
I mean, fuck, I have band members that like I don't even, unless it's like family shit, obviously, but like I don't leave between sound check and our set time. Like I don't give a shit if I gotta go shower or whatever. I'm like down the street from my house anyway. Who cares? You know, this is like home. This is like our local venue. Like,
yeah.
And I got friends like, oh, I gotta go shower and I gotta go shit and shave, and you know what I mean. I'm just like, just hang, dude.
Yeah.
Hang. Like when you were little, that's all you wanted to do, and
right.
And now you're gonna just be like
a little prima donna about it.
Yeah.
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 No, man, it's so funny because I'll invite all my friends out to shows, you know, posting on social media, sending out all the text messages, and then I know that other people are doing that too, and then they fuck around during the show, and it's like, or they get like super wasted after the set or something like that, and it's like, I don't know. I totally agree. I was, you know, waiting to do this my whole life, and I'm gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's like you could party, you could have a good time, and like enjoy yourself, but like ultimately, like if it's not for the people there, like why are you even doing it?
Right.
If you want to be self-indulgent, like go be a fucking, you know, Reddit famous TikTok band or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like don't play the local club. You know, like everybody's there to be with other people.
Right.
So
right.
Lean into that. You know, that's kind of my take on it. You know.
So let's dig into maps, because we got Shane's perspective. He's managing it, but you started it, and you started at 19, your first lease.
Yeah. Was
that the location that you're at now?
No, it was in Huntington, and actually Ian from Gardeners Logic was on that lease, and so was Gary from Gardeners Logic. They're my two original business partners. But in reality, it was just my band at the time. And I was like, guys, we should really start a business together. Like, you're fucking crazy. I'll never forget, I like sat him down at the subway off of Yorktown and, Garfield and Beach in Huntington at like midnight. And I was like, guys, I think we could do this. They're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But at the time, my parents had like built a little 10-foot by 12-foot room for me in the backyard of their house.
Okay.
My dad's a contractor. You know, all the resources in the world for that. And like he basically like built it for me with no insulation. It was just, you know, open studs in the inside. And he's just like, all right, here's the material. You and your boys like put it up.
That's sick.
You know? And so we fucked up the drywall. I helped with the drywall, you know, and then we like couldn't paint for shit, still can't paint for shit. So he was like, put carpet on the wall, you know, like, and it's so like, and then it was like, we were sweating our asses off. And I was like, I think Gary just passed out. My dad's like, all right, I think like we are going to like put air conditioning in there, you know? And so that was like our first like jam space. And then like I started recording us like with my graduation money from high school. I had like a few bucks and like bought my first interface, and then like straight up, like, you know, the whole like Craigslist like trade up story where the guy like trade a paperclip for a house.
Yeah.
I kind of did that with microphones.
Oh.
And like I was just like trading stupid shit like XLR to quarter-inch adapters or like whatever, or like selling fucking IEC cables or just bullshit, you know what I mean? And like literally it was like trading up to try to get enough microphones to like record a band. And they're all super cheap and whatever. But I was kind of just like doing that. And then I had the wild idea of like, let's do a record label. And in hindsight, like, stupid idea. I'm not gonna like fund you know, people's projects. Like, happy to help them make the record, but like I don't come for money. Like, you know, I don't have dispensable income like that. But anyways, but I really wanted to like work with other bands, you know, and like help them not have a terrible first recording experience like I did, you know, because like when I was in high school, before we started this whole thing, recorded somebody we trusted, and it just turned out terrible, and it was just like a bad experience, and the band broke up, and I was just like, fuck this,
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I'm gonna figure out how to record it myself because I'm interested enough in like the engineering side, and yeah, and so had enough shit to record there. Wanted to work with local bands. Hooked up with a local band that like I actually knew a couple of the members I played Little League with here in Costa Mesa, and it was one of those things where like already I was like, well, do you guys have a budget? Like, I'm trying to do this for a living. I don't know how much things cost. Like, I was really like naive, but like, they're like, well, we can't afford to pay you, but like, we'll figure out how to pay you back some way, like with booking shows or like whatever. I was like, cool with me, dude. And so like, help them do a few songs. I think we ended up doing like an EP. But out of that, they were like super cool, and they're like, we can't let you down. And so the trade was, my buddy had worked at Scholastic, like
The books.
like for elementary school, like you do the book fair and shit like that.
Yeah.
There's a similar company called Teacher Created Materials, and they do a lot of like interactive like audiobooks. So he's like, my company I work for, and he was like the front desk person, which is hilarious, is like looking for somebody to help them record this like audiobook stuff. So long story short, I was like, yeah, I could help. Sure. It was like one microphone, like a speech microphone, blah, blah, blah. And I was like signed this like corporate contract to like do these fucking audiobooks. And they were super rad. Hired me at like 18 or something like that. I was bringing the talent like through my dad's garage. He was like, how's a Coors Light? He's like, hey guys, how's it going? Like next to the pool table, and like brought him to the backyard into this like little shack that we like built. And then like my laptop fan is really loud, and then like there's a motorcycle going by. I have like blankets everywhere, and there's like this like fully grown voice actor like talking in the microphone. I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing? But we like got away with it somehow. I don't know how we did it. And then at the same time, I used to teach drum lessons, and a drum student of mine was like, dude in his 40s, and he had like a commercial building in North Huntington. And he was just like, I was talking to him like, what's it like getting a business license, going with a record label idea. And so he hit me up out of the blue, kind of like right when I started getting that audiobook thing off the ground. And he was like, hey, are you still interested in this? Like, I have space opening up at our warehouse. And he had built it like already out. Like it was like a room within the warehouse. And he used it as kind of a practice / conference space. It was kind of weird. Low ceilings, like not the best design, but it was technically soundproof-ish, you know? And I was just like looking at the income we were generating through the audiobooks I was like doing in my parents' backyard. And I was just like, oh, this would be great to bring them to like a presentable location. And looking at the overhead and the rent, and I was just like, I think we could do this, guys. And this audiobook client that we just signed another 90-book contract with, like, can pay for rent. You know what I mean? And like, we could do the thing. We could like bring local bands in and do this.
How many books did you do with the company?
Oh, we did like hundreds, dude. But they were like, you got to think they're like kids' books. They're like, 30 pages long. But the hard part was some of them would be like narrative, and then some of them would be like cow, cat, moo, meow, and then each one of those would have to be like separate audio files. So we'd end up with like thousands of separate exported audio files.
Oh shit.
With like naming conventions, and then like that way they would dump it into their software. So if you clicked on something, it would like find that file path and then play that one word.
Oh.
But then you need to be able to click on a paragraph, and it plays the whole paragraph that we like edited. I ended up getting Ian and Gary on this like audiobook program, and so I was like having them edit books with me and like all that kind of stuff. We were really tackling it like old school, like gung ho. And coincidentally, our then current like new studio space was like a block from Teacher Created Materials, from the client, like on the same street in North Huntington.
Wow.
So it was great. And then kind of naturally, I accidentally like helped them build their own studio. You know what I mean? And like they hired me to do it, and it was kind of cool. It was fine. It was like the relationship, they figured out how to do it in-house, and I had like started getting bands.
Which you really wanted to do.
Yeah.
So you passed the torch.
And it was great. And like, I still, like, every once in a while hear from some of those guys at, you know, guys and girls at Teacher Creative Materials. And it's just like, man, that was so cool. Like, this helped like start the studio.
Yeah.
You know? And so we were at that space in Huntington for like 4 years. And then helping local bands, like nobody's like really making money. Like I brought Jimmy on board eventually. He started engineering. Vince was on board. He started engineering and helping produce. But like we did it really like weird in hindsight. Like I'd be like the producer. But since I was in school and like gigging and doing other stuff, I'd be like, cool. We're having this band come in for 2 weeks straight. I could do the first 4 hours session. Then we have Vince come in and record guitars. We're going to have Jimmy come in and record vocals. And we do like crazy like 12, 14-hour days.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? But we'd like split it up between crew, but we were all after that playing shows together with those bands. You know what I mean? So like everybody trusted everybody, and it was like a good like, you know, fun thing. And like we were hooking everybody up on the rate because like we knew that like we were still figuring our shit out, you know?
Yeah.
But unfortunately I had like a falling out with the guy that we're technically subleasing the place from. And at that time, I just graduated college. I was like on contract in San Diego for a gig, like doing live audio engineering, like all summers. Like graduated college, went to Europe for 3 weeks with Gary, came back to this contract gig. Studio was running itself with the other boys, and then like we lost the place.
Ugh.
And I was like, fuck. And at that time, I was like full-time in this, like full-time engineer, basically. Full-time engineer and drummer, essentially. And yeah, and so I was basically like, fuck, what am I going to do? And we had to move all the shit out and put a lot of it in storage. And then I still had records to do. So like I partnered up with my good buddy John O'Brien, who was a local engineer producer on a studio called Music Box. He recently moved it to Idlewild. Super cool. So that's where we recorded the new Shape stuff. We went up there and hung out with
That's
him.
what Shane said.
Yeah. And kind of basically for a year, like with John and this studio that used to be in town, Hybrid, and then some studios in LA, I was just like still making records and like, but I was stressed, man. I was just like, I want my own space again.
Yeah.
Like, I have all this gear sitting around, and it was just like I was still making really good records I'm proud of, you know? Like it wasn't that it was like, but it was just my workflow stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And then I literally got a fucking Facebook message from this guy named Mike Willson. And it was like, hey, I own a studio called Artisans Label, which I had known about in Fullerton, because like of course I knew the other studios. And I heard you're looking for another studio. I'd love to like invite you over. So me and my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, Amy, we went over, and he had this like funny fried chicken and PBR party. Which in hindsight, I was just in New York talking. He lives in New York now. I was just in New York with him, and I was just like, why those two things? He's like, what do you mean? Like, why? That wasn't even a question. I was like, all right, if you don't understand why this is funny, like, you know what I mean? Like, and it was just one of those funny things like we were just joking about, you know? It's just like bucket of chicken and PBR, you know, like super low key, but it was actually really cool and really, really fun. And he had a bunch of other people there. He had this guy named Barrett Slagle, who was his producer there when they started. He was in a band called Great Glass Elevator.
Okay. I remember hearing that name.
Yeah, and they were in a couple other bands and stuff. And then his engineer was this guy named Kyle Griffin, amazing dude, great engineer. Basically, Mike, Kyle, and Barrett kind of like operated the studio together. So like Mike was like the owner, Kyle was the engineer, Barrett was the producer, and they like crushed records. And their whole deal was like providing full label services without like a label contract and stuff like that. So like they'd really help figure out budget, like all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so long story short, we kind of just like were talking about it. At that point, shit, this was 2014, something like that. He was basically just like the studio's like not doing so hot. Like he had moved to New York. He'd always wanted to live there. He could manage it remotely. They didn't have enough work. The gear started kind of atrophying all over the place. Barrett got other gigs. Kyle got other gigs. And it just like, it wasn't how it was in its glory days, you know? And he was really like looking to figure out a way to like keep it up and running. And I was like, great, I'm super fucking busy. I need a studio. Like, let's figure this out. So we had like struck up this deal where like split half the expenses, half the calendar. Did that for a year. I did like 10 records that year. And I was like, shit, that's pretty good. Like almost a record a month. Like, and after that we had like a little meeting and we realized that like that's a lot for one person, but we're still like, he's a total like spreadsheet numbers guy. He's like, technically we're still only at 25% capacity. If you're looking at like 24/7, this is in a commercial building, you know what I mean? Like
right.
operational status. So anyways, and I also like was the one producing 90% of his clients' records. So I was using his half of the studio time too. So we're like, why are we doing this separately?
Yeah.
Like, let's just like join forces and try to like make this really crush. So we've been partners ever since. And yeah, we operate it now as Maps, which is, you know, the studio that I had started with Gary and Ian. He still operates Artisan's label and kind of offers a lot of the services. He's doing some really cool shit right now that's about to launch. It's not like public yet, but he's in New York. We just opened a New York location, so we have a New York studio. We're partnering with studios in Brooklyn right now. We're in talks with the studio in LA. So the whole idea is we're going to start expanding our studio offerings because we operate primarily for freelance producers and engineers to have 24/7 self-serve access to a studio.
Right.
So,
okay. That's so dope.
Yeah. I'm sure Shane got into that. Like I said, I didn't listen to his episode on purpose, but but yeah, so we brought Shane on board to kind of manage over here. And then we actually have another person on staff named Austin Gutierrez, who went through the same music program we all went to in high school, like me and Jimmy and Adrian from Big Monsta. A bunch of other local musicians have all gone through that same music program. And yeah, and so we have a team in New York. We got a team on the West Coast. And yeah, we're just kind of doing the thing, man, like really working to expand and keep on offering that. And like, it's really, really fun. Like right now, I have 2 clients in the studio and I'm hanging out with you. So
that's fucking bitching.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun. But
well,
yeah.
Congratulations. That's,
Thank you.
I mean, that's the dream. You just went for it and it all worked out. Who's your favorite drummer?
Yeah, I guess we should talk about this. Is a drumming podcast. Well, it's funny. I told you I was listening to Oliver's episode on the way over here and he's like, Keith Moon. I'm like, God damn it. Yeah, Keith Moon is a big one for me for sure.
Okay.
I'm a huge Stuart Copeland fan.
Yeah.
Obviously Bonham. I'm actually like in more like modern drummers. I'm a really big Patrick Keeler fan. He plays with Rock on tours.
Okay.
And yeah, he just like rips, you know, and then, you know, big Steve Jordan fan. On the Jack White train, Delbert Jones plays with Jack White. He is a monster. But I've also like been able to tour with a lot of really cool drummers. Like I tour doing front of house and I've done monitors and other stuff for Kamasi Washington. And he has his 2, you know, go-to drummers are Tony Austin and Ronald Bruner Jr. And they're like monster, you know, modern drummers that are really well versed in so much, like when it comes to like old school straight ahead jazz to like funk and hip hop and, you know, R&B stuff and pop stuff. And then like Ronald played with the Suicidal Tendencies for a while. So like he's got like this crazy bombastic stuff. And I've done hundreds of shows with that band, you know, on the audio crew, and watching those guys in and out, you know, from all over the world has been like an education in and of itself for sure. But yeah, man, I mean, that's kind of what I've been up to, like, you know, but really like, it's kind of funny. I absolutely 100% drummer, but like being a producer too, I find myself like music I listen to a lot, like just when I'm just listening to music is like not super drum oriented all the time. In a weird way, it's like more songwriting oriented and like,
for sure, that makes
sense. You know, like,
well, the studio's an instrument, and if you're kind of like conducting bands in a way,
yeah,
you know, Yeah, you have to be aware of the arrangement and like all
Right.
the levels and dynamics.
Right. Yeah. Like this band I was working with today called the Hypno Rings, super like Zappa influenced and stuff, and the drummer Daniel's a monster, just like playing more notes than I've played in the past like 5 years. You know what I mean? Like just so fast and crazy, and I'm just like, holy shit, dude! Like, but like my brain is like processing everything that's going on, you know, drum wise, but I'm also just like, how is this all working with the bigger picture? Or tonally, are things working out? And it's just like, I find myself just using my drummer brain as an asset to like capture one of the more difficult instruments in the studio, which is drums.
Yeah.
And kind of just like use that as a really solid foundation to like make the rest of the record happen. Because in my opinion, any like modern pop rock, you know, genre, like if you have shitty drums on your record, like no matter how good your vocals are, like whatever's gonna fucking suck.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's why we've like gone into like programming and all that stuff. Like, not that we have shitty drummers all over the place, but you need this solid like rhythm to build a good song, in my opinion.
Totally.
You know? But yeah,
Shane said you have a few different kits at the studio.
I do. I actually was just making a list, like I shit you not today, because studio maintenance was Shane. And it was like, finish my Rogers kit. Like
sick.
Yeah, no, I have our main kit we recorded with. I have a 56 WFL kit, but it's a little Frankenstein.
Wow.
Funny story about that kit. Since I'm into this long-winded tangent today,
Go for it.
You know, I've been freelance like production live engineer dude forever, but I was working a gig on the Queen Mary like years ago, like in my early 20s. And I don't know if you've ever been on the Queen Mary, but there's not that good a cell phone reception in the belly of this like ancient ship. So I'd like had my eBay alerts at the time set to like vintage Ludwig. Ooh. You know, because I was just like, I just want a vintage Ludwig kit. And basically, I got this alert, and it was like, I just saw it pop up. It was like white marine pearl. I didn't even look at the details. It said like 450.
Ooh, later.
And I was just like, shit. And I just typed in 500 and then put my phone in my pocket. I was like, I doubt I'm going to win that bid. Whatever. Like, I saw it was like 60s Ludwig or something, whatever the thing was. Go down the belly of ship, lose reception. Can't come back up like an hour later, and I get this like notification, you won. I'm like, what? Shit, did I just buy a kit? What the hell? Like, by no means did I have the money. Like,
oh no.
I was just like, this is like a screaming deal for like a vintage kit. Hopefully it's legit, you know? I started looking into it, and I was like, basically what the guy did, and it wasn't advertised this way, but like, it was like matching kick and rack, and there was another rack that was like an Orphan, but of the same era, and a floor tom that was an Orphan of the same era that wasn't the same wrap, and he rewrapped it.
Oh.
And then he had put like modern bass drum spurs on it.
Okay.
Fine. Cool. Like, you know, I hit hard. Like, I can't have some bitchy ass. You know?
If you're going to work with it.
Yeah. And anyways, so I was like working. I was living at home at the time. I get a call like a week later or whatever. My dad's like, hey, this one box showed up. Like, it's pretty big. I was like, oh, maybe that's my bass drum. I was like, is there any more boxes? And he's like, no, it's just this one. I'm like, that's fucking weird. So I show up, and this fucking dipshit, USPS, like the Postal Service, single wrap of shitty like Dollar Tree bubble wrap, and he like Russian dolled the drums. He took the heads off, and he like stacked them all within each other. Were they like insulated within each other, or they're just floating around? It was just like floating around. Oh god. So I opened the shit up, and the floor tom leg bracket had busted entirely from the inside out through the bass drum shell. Oh. Just like wrap and all. And I was like, oh my God. And so then I finally get my eyes on the kit, and like stamped inside is 1956 on the bass drum, and it's a WFL, so it's before Ludwig, right? Yeah. And same thing with the rack tom. And I was just like, what the fuck?
Now you're pissed.
Like, yeah. It was the 13-inch rack tom and the 22-inch kick drum. I'm just like, dude. And it's like the good shallow depth, like the vintage shit that you want, you know? And I'm just like, how? Like, I'm not even like mad that like, oh, what was me and my drum kit? Like, this is a piece of like wood that's been aged not only before being a drum, but in drum form
Yeah.
for a very long time.
Yeah, this is
like,
history.
Like, you just fucked this up, you know? So anyways, I went through the whole claim thing. I got like $100 back. And then my dad, being a nifty guy, he's like, I gotta fix that shit. I was like, Dad, you don't understand. It's the integrity of the wood and the resonance and da. He's like, no, man, I got some fucking wood epoxy. Let's do it. And so like we clamped the shit. And I've been playing it like that ever since.
Wow.
And it has like the original, like, not original, it's a replacement one, but the same kind of old school tom mounted rail, you know, like how it's like, it was like kind of rounded a little bit.
Yeah.
You could like mount the tom and then like shift it on the bass drum.
Yeah.
Then it had like the original like ride holder
cool.
on the bass drum, which I was bummed about because I was always like, that's such a cool classic look. But like with the integrity of the drum being kind of shifty now, I was like never mounted anything on it again, never gigged with it.
Mm-hmm.
Just been in the studio, and that's been like our main kit for a long time.
That sounds great.
Sounds great. It's been on shit ton of records, and yeah, it's killer, and it still hangs in there. And you know, basically, I scored this kit for $400, $450 or something like that.
Fuck, dude.
But it is kind of Frankenstein. You know, it's like by no means like a collector's kit, but it's like sounds fucking great.
It's
it does
unique.
the thing, and
No one else can claim that.
And then I got like a similar situation for like a 60s Slingerland kit. I got that modern day Gretsch kit. Have some like weird orphan pieces of DW kit. I have a shit ton of snares. I got a couple Superphonics, like old Superphonics.
Ooh, yeah.
Acrolite Black Beauty. That nice like custom maple Ludwig snare. I'm a Ludwig guy. But
yep. I have the Superphonic myself.
And then I got that Rogers kit. I got inherited kind of through a family friend. Holiday kit, like a 60s holiday Rogers kit. Got it rewrapped through Jimmy Ford.
Oh, I have a Ford drum set.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
And he did it for me, and he's in town in Huntington and took care of me, and so I basically have it wrapped beautifully. I got all the hardware. I just need to fucking put the hardware back on and slap her on. I think I got to figure out like bass drum spurs, but yeah, it's a 24 by 16,
Ooh.
13 by 9, 16 by 16.
24 by 16.
It's shallow.
They're normally 14, a lot of those.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the old ones. The old ones, yeah. But it's shallow, like, to modern day standards.
For sure.
But, yeah, so that's the kit that's been sitting there for a while. And then I have some, like, more 50s, like, calfskin Slingerland bass drums, just like that I have floating around. But, like, they're kind of studio pieces, you know? Like,
yeah.
You can mismatch stuff in the studio all day long.
Oh, for sure.
Like, who cares, you know? I mean, I don't really care live either, but...
Right.
Yeah, as far as, like, my gigging kit, I just take the Gretsch out 'cause it's, like, the modern...
Mm-hmm.
If somebody stands on the bass drum, I'm not tripping on it, you know? Like,
right.
rock and roll, kick it, I'll backline it all day long, you know?
Yeah.
But,
do you have any acrylic pieces?
Dude, I don't, and, like, I've always wanted some, but I've always wanted to, like, jelly bean it, like...
Cool.
Kind of just like get a good deal on a bass drum, get a good deal on some toms.
eBay, you can find just the shells, no hardware.
I know. I kind of want it with the hardware. I don't mind if like different eras,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But one thing I trip about, man, is just like the cracks in the acrylic, and you know.
Well, then there's also drummaker.net.
Mm-hmm.
That's the route I might go for my next kit with the acrylic.
Yeah. I just like, I'm so spoiled, and especially with like the PC backline stuff, I have access to a lot of kits too.
Yeah.
Some amazing kits over there, and like a lot of like cool like Yamaha recording custom shit, and like Yamaha stage customs, and a bunch of DW stuff, you know, some more modern Ludwig stuff. We have a really rad sonar kit over there, so like I feel really spoiled, and like I don't really have these big wants for drum kits right now. I just want to finish my fucking Rogers, and I just need to make time to do it. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. What sticks do you use?
I've been stuck on the ProMark Japanese oak for a very long time.
What size?
5A.
Okay. Those are probably stronger though than.
Yeah, a little more dense, still
Yeah.
kind of weighty. I used to play 5Bs, and then I just like, as a young, tall, gangly dude with big hands, I was just like, swinging those giant sticks around way too much. Like I was like, I need to like check myself. So I dropped stick size to try to like force myself into more dynamics, you know?
Okay.
And I've been stuck on that ever since. Like I still fucking wail when it's go time, but like I feel like for some reason with a smaller stick, like I'm a little more in tune with like my dynamics in a weird way. But yeah, on paper, there's a lot of the style of music I should play. I should be playing 5Bs, you know. But yeah, just been on the 5As
cool.
for a while.
Everyone I've talked to has a different philosophy about
Yeah.
their sticks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like ultra picky. It's just like if I'm gonna buy them, I'm just gonna get the ones that I like. You know, like I've played other people's sticks. I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. Like I'm into it. But like I don't need to like change up my program. You know,
it's all preference.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, I respect guys who are like really like, I have this stick for this style of music and this stick for this style of music, and you know what I mean, and like they're willing to shift and be really flexible, but generally I'm just like kind of aged into a drummer that's like pretty meat and potatoes, you know. So
you're like one of the most solid rock drummers I've ever heard.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
that means a lot.
No, dude. I mean, Shane and I were talking about Shape Pitaki, and I happened to be the first drummer of that band. And then when I heard that you were playing with them and saw you guys, it was so much better of a fit for the band. Because I'm ahead of the beat. I'm punk metal. Like, I want to play fast. You know, that song Submarine, I was all about it because we can play fucking fast now.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm always rushing shit, and like Brett, the old bass player, is always like mad dogging me, like, fucking slow down.
And Brett's super chilled. It's like, you know.
Yeah. And he's like perfect. He's always on time. You know?
Yeah.
So it was annoying to have a bass player that has better meter than the drummer.
I know. I feel that. Yeah, that's killer, man. I mean, that's so funny because like when Shane first like approached me about the band, I was like, well, you're a drummer, because I met him with him playing drums.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he's a great drummer too.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, what's the deal? Like, you trying to fucking Dave Grohl it up or what? Like, come on, give it to me real, you know? Well, I met there a couple drummers, and I was like, all right, I'm trying to like sniff out the bullshit. Like, why haven't you been able to keep a drummer, you know? And yeah, and so yeah, it ended up being really cool. And like he kind of swooned me. He's like, hey, we could surf together. And now we never surf together, you know? And he was just like trying to like wine and dine me a little bit, you know? Hey, I'll come record at your studio. No, I'm just kidding. I love Shane. He's like one of my best buds. But yeah, it's just been a good fit. Like I love his songwriting.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, especially like that first iteration of the band and stuff was like super fun. Like at that time we were all just like super locked in and no bullshit. Like he was like ready to promote and like get his merch together and all the stuff that was like a pain point when you were young, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like as far as like what you want out of like a songwriter, band leader kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, he was like really on it. So much so that we still have vinyl from the first record that but yeah, man, I mean, it was really cool to like jump into that and like still be a part of it and like eventually bring Shane kind of into my role at the studio. And yeah, it's been really cool, man. I mean, Shane writes great fucking songs and, you know, stoked to be a part of it.
Yep. Achromatic Color. It's still my favorite tune.
Yeah, I love that one, man. We haven't brought some of the, you know, push for that.
Yeah.
I got you.
That's
Next
a good
set.
one. Yeah.
I'll bring it back.
I'm there.
All right.
What does drumming mean to you?
I don't know, man. I mean, I think like a lot of people, especially like with like anything rock oriented, like at a young angsty age, it was like very therapeutic. You know what I mean? You can't like quite like sort out and communicate your emotions or what you're going through, and then like music is this like unspoken language that you just communicate through like you're playing, you know? And for me, like I don't know why like I was attracted to drums versus like a chord based instrument, you know? But I was just always really attracted to like how visceral and like there's no denying like when something feels right rhythmically, like you know, like one of the funniest quotes I ever heard from like, believe it or not, like Franz Ferdinand of all bands was just like, our number one job is to make the chicks dance.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And I was just like, in hindsight, like that probably gets some scrutiny nowadays, but like at the time I was just like, dude, like how aware of like a very popular band, you know what I mean?
They're there to make money, man.
To just like, you know, and it really, that's what it comes down to. It's just like, if you're playing some fucked up weird shit that like nobody could dance to, like it's fun, but like at the end of the day, like we all just like in our like basic genetic makeup relate to certain rhythms, you know? And that's kind of like what I try to bring to like a song, you know? And like I'm very, again, like songwriting oriented, like, and I always have been. You know, like one of the coolest things I heard like a documentary years ago with, I think it was Roger Daltrey that brought it up. It's just like Keith Moon would like not finish his drum part until he heard the vocal melody. You know what I mean? Like being very aware and like how is this, you know, playing into the quote unquote most connected, you know, piece of music for like most listeners, right?
Sure.
And I would argue that like drums are second to that because like not everybody could recognize chords. They can't recognize you're playing a minor versus major.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just know that it's this or that. It makes them feel this certain way.
Yeah.
Like generally, unless you're like the whitest person ever, you clap on 2 and 4. Like it's just a natural thing, hopefully, for you. Hopefully it's not 1 and 3. But like, you know, and it's like there's something about it that's just like it's very just it's connective, you know. And I'm all about spending time with good people and sharing experiences with good people. And for me, like drumming is like a weird way to do that, you know.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, you brought up Stuart Copeland, who that's the first time for any of these conversations.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And when I was in my first band playing drums, my dad would drive me to practice and I'd be like, put on the Police.
Hell yeah.
That guy gets me pumped. And he fucking plays the song.
Yeah.
You know, and he's very unique, very restrained. And then he'll have these like blasts of anarchy in the piece like of a song. It just comes out like a snare roll that was like, holy fuck, like that was there the whole time.
Yeah.
That's possible. And yeah, and he, you know.
An all traditional grip, like.
Yeah, that too.
You know.
And, you know, he fucking hated Sting and like, you know, whatever the deal was like all these weird factors that made that band so cool. But the fact that he like played the song and clearly that's something that you've incorporated into your playing. Yeah,
man. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to like, I forget what it's like, some weird anthology. I think it's like 2 or 3, you know, CDs worth of like live Police stuff. And it's all like the early years. And there's some live recordings that like Stuart Copeland's just going, dude.
Nice.
And it's like super punky.
Okay.
It was kind of before they got really into the reggae thing.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Cool.
So, but he's my guy, man. I mean, it's just dynamically side stick stuff, like doing stuff like that, like laying into that kind of pocket, hi-hat work. Yeah. You know, I'm not a big, like, I'm not going to do like octavons or like weird little rototom shit. Like, that's not me, but like,
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
Yeah, the clave and the kick stuff, like reggae with the hi-hat. I know. I actually heard you warming up for a Shape set one time and you were doing that kind of stuff. And I was like, that motherfucker knows what's up. Okay, so we're almost at the end here. What are a few different tips that you'd give to any drummer listening?
Like young drummers or like any drummer?
I guess whatever you think is the most useful.
Man, I feel like, I mean, this is just coming from like somebody who like records for a living, you know, and like engineers, drummers all the time. It's like, it's not just dynamics with the band. It's like dynamics within your instrument. Like, it's really unfortunate to see so many like ripping drummers like play so unbalanced within the instrument. Like, and we don't think about it a lot like this, but the drums are one cohesive instrument. Like they need to sound like one piece. You know what I mean? You mean like their mix between like the kick and snare and the relationship? Toms, okay. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's like, again, because it's this visceral, like emotional thing, whatever it is, whatever your connection is to that. Maybe it's the snare or the kick, but for a lot of people, it ends up being the cymbals. So it's just like, goddamn, you know what I mean? It's like slamming the cymbals. You're like, holy shit, you're trying to cut my head off with those, man. Like,
yeah,
we could hear them. Trust me, And sometimes, like, what's his name? Why am I telling you? Jim Keltner, studio player. He's like, so many drummers would benefit from playing softer.
Mm-hmm.
Which, me being a super fucking loud drummer, I'm like, fuck off, old man. Like, I'm gonna play loud. But especially with cymbals, you don't need to play them loud. Like, you're gonna fuck them up. They don't sound better loud 90% of the time. Like, just the way they're voiced.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're not made to be played that loudly. And not only cymbals, but it's just like really listening to, like, when you hit a drum this way versus that way, like, how's the tone coming across and all that kind of stuff, and really trying to, like, pay attention to your dynamics when they get. You can play loud and have good tone. You can play loud and be balanced and have dynamic, and, like, really listening to, especially records, man. Like, these old records that we all grew up listening to, like, there's no studio magic. There's no, like, quantization going on. There's no, like, crazy multi-band EQ. It's like, or compression. It's like, there's no. That's how he sounds off microphones, like, open.
I think a lot of that is they had to pay for their time, so they couldn't fuck up. They were, like, committed to the take, and to each, like, we have an hour left, we got to get this done.
Right.
And they're playing with, maybe 2 mics if they're doing, like, a 4-track.
I know, and everybody talks shit on, like, Ringo. You know what I mean? But, like, you start, like, listening to those records, and you're like, that sounds like a whole drum kit with very minimal mics. Yeah. Which is a testament to his playing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
George Martin brought him into the band for that reason.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, not talking shit on my metal heads, but, like, miking the ride and the fucking, top at the tom and the bottom of the tom and doing all these fucking samples. And like, it's just kind of like, well, I get it when you're going for a full, like, triggered production sound. Like, you can't get away from that. Like, that's just where a lot of, like, metal music is gone.
Right.
But generally, if you can't play, like, these super fast notes in an even pattern, to me, like, that's something to work towards. You know what I mean? Like, you should be able to make your instrument like, sound good in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. As a metal drummer, when I approach recording and mixing, what I want from it, because I don't mix, I mix poorly. What I want is, like, a more rock and roll approach. Even if I'm doing a lot of double pedal and blast beats, like, the trigger is awful to me. Like, any of that stuff. I think Vinnie Paul was, like, the best to do it.
Yeah.
And then from there it kind of spiraled out of control. But you're not the first producer to mention playing the cymbals softer. And I was lucky to have someone catch me doing that early in my 20s when I first started recording. He owned the studio. His son and I worked together, like, doing the recordings, and he was like, "You're playing your cymbals too loud." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "We can always turn them down, but if they're too loud, they're going to drown out the rest of your drums."
Yeah.
All those frequencies are, like, on the super high end, and they're going to cut through no matter what.
Yeah.
So that's when I started learning, like, the actual dynamics. Like, kick needs to be strong for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Snare can go in between a certain range, but the cymbals you can really play light.
And you have a lot more dynamic range, Generally, through, like, rock and metal music, we've gravitated towards, like, lower tuning of drums,
Right.
And with that, you kind of have to hit them at a certain, like, velocity to get the drum to even sound okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can't really get, with the exception of, like, a snare, probably, or depending on how your tuning is, get really low and dynamic without it just being like a fucking cardboard box. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of have to, like, dig into a lot of, like, these bigger drums that we have tuned low, But with cymbals, it's like I personally, I don't recommend this for everybody, but, like, I play really big cymbals, big thin cymbals, because I'm trying to get that pitch down.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? People think big cymbals are louder. It's just, like, not necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, actually, I'm trying to get a lower pitch to where I could lay into these things a little bit more if I need to, and it's not going to be this big overbearing, thing.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm a big like crash my ride kind of guy, and like having recorded myself countless times, and like just traditional mic placements, like all that kind of stuff. It's just like you're kind of like, if that's not working, it's coming from the source.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you kind of adjust your playing to like sound like a balanced player?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
So
you see all the transients from everyone and yourself, so that they don't lie.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the data's there, but I mean, that's kind of my big thing that I preach a lot. And like, but I just kind of like try to, especially in the studio, just be like, hey man, like, you want a bigger sounding snare? Like, here's your snare mic. Like, what do you hear most? They're like, oh, the hi-hat. Just like, we'll just play less hi-hat. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or play harder snare. Like, figure out this balance,
Yeah.
And, second to that, like, I'm still baffled by how many amazing drummers suck at tuning drums.
Mm.
And I can't give you an answer. Like, the only reason I feel like I've been decent at tuning drums over the years is because I went in full psychopath mode when I was in like high school, locked myself in a room for like countless days with like a bunch of different drum heads, used and new and fucked up, and just tried to figure out how to tune my drum kit.
Yeah.
And lost my mind, gave up on it, and then like 5 years down the road, the wood aged and sounded better, and I was like, dude, this shit sounds great now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then recording, man, like seriously, like, and it's hilarious to like talk to drummers, and some drummers just tell me straight, like, I don't give a fuck about tuning.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to hit them hard, play them in time, and have fun and put on a good show. And I'm like, hey, I don't disrespect that, but like when it comes down to like doing a record, which is gonna be like your legacy,
spend some time.
Yeah, we need to do this.
It took me a long time to have the patience to learn how to tune.
It's hard. The
relationship with the resonant head, because I was the same way. I was just like, I want to bash the shit out of it, and I was under, serving myself.
Yeah.
And now I'm better at it. It was Jimmy and Jay, the guys that made my Ford kit.
Yeah.
They're like, how are you gonna tune your kit? And I was like, oh, super low. And they're like, whoa. Don't do that. You have to you're not going to be able to get fucking tone out of these drums, They're like, we made them to be loud, that's what you asked for, but you have to pay attention to the way you tune. So since then, I still crank my snare. I'm using a Superphonic. It's 6.5, so I've got a lot of room there.
Yeah.
But the kick now is floppy, and that made me play my double pedal a lot differently, made me work harder.
Yeah.
But I'm getting way better sound out of it. And then I use a lot of floor tom, and so I crank the rack, and then the floor tom is like a bitch.
Yeah.
For me.
It's hard, man. It's really, really hard. And yeah, man, I can't, it's not whoever has a hard time with tuning, you're not alone.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I'm not going to name any names. Some big fucking names that I've been on the road with and, seen on massive stages at massive festivals, just fucking needing somebody to help them out. And it's weird. And it's a weird thing because guitar players have a fucking guitar tuner.
Yeah.
And you don't see anybody in a professional level tuning by ear on a guitar. You know? But sorry for whoever's out there, but I don't believe in any fucking drum dial bullshit. Nothing. I just don't believe in it, and it's for many reasons. But tension of the head, fucking tension of the rods, what's going on with your rusty ass fucking old Ludwig, lugs, everything, all those variables, or something nobody ever fucking talks about is Remo, Aquarian, Evans, all those guys have fucked up heads all the time. And I've had so many heads where the glue is fucked up on one side and there's more glue on one side. And, if I would just do it by tension or whatever, it's nope, there's more shit going on. Or it's you have a vintage drum that over the years is a little oblong.
Yeah. My rack tom's gotten, it's more of an oval now.
Yeah.
Over the years.
And it's just none of that's going to be, sure, I guess you could get close or whatever. You can get close by tuning that shit super fucking high, stretching the head. And just tuning down from there. That was one thing it took me forever to understand. Everybody's tune down, tune down, tune down. Always start high and then tune down to the pitch that you want. I'm why? That makes no sense to me, you know? And then like as I started kind of getting into other years, I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, like we're getting the head to work the way we want it to,
Right.
you know, and letting it kind of
Interesting.
release tension versus build tension, because it's always going to, once you're up to tension, it's gonna release, you know. So might as well try to like get it down and settle to where you want it to be, and you're kind of more in the ballpark. It's a little abstract unless you're like in front of a drum trying to figure it out, you know.
Well, that's the thing, man, is like every drum's different.
Mm-hmm.
Every head, like you just said, is different. The size sticks you're using, I mean, the weather
Yep,
will
weather
affect
for sure.
shit. You know, my kit sounds different in summer when it's hot versus a cold winter. And for me, like the reason I crank a lot of stuff so much is because I use 2B sticks. So they it will go down.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I really have to pay attention to like the lugs that I'm hitting nearest because those go down first. And
Yeah, like lug locks are interesting to me. If you ever used them, just to like keep it from going. But then, dude, there's a bunch of crazy ass YouTube videos out there where they use crazy tunings where one lug is completely loose. And then you do all this other weird shit.
Yep.
To me, I think that's actually bad for the integrity of the drum. Keeping all the tension offset is probably going to warp your drum way quicker.
Yeah.
Fuck the hoops. You guys buy new hoops. Like, I don't give a shit about that. But like,
Right.
your lugs pushing on the shell of your drum, repairing shells and trying to relaminate shells, dude. No.
Yeah.
No, you're done. Like, unless it's a metal drum, then fuck it, whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, aluminum or
Man.
brass or whatever.
Those fucking Q drums, man. So sick.
Those things are sick. Yeah, I've worked with a lot of those, and yeah, it's tricky. But yeah, I mean, for sure, my advice: balance yourself as an instrument, and try to just go down the rabbit hole, you know, and figure out tuning. You know, try some shit. But
That's very nuanced, wise advice. A lot of people have just been like, what I would say too is like, oh, click and fucking rudiments and shit. Everyone's had a different piece of input that's of value, but I really like what you had to say
Thank you.
about all that.
Thank you.
Anything else that you'd like to talk about?
No, man. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm always. I mean, I think your listener base is pretty local.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm always a resource if anybody ever needs anything like drumming, engineering. Like, I'm always just trying to like kind of give back, because like my community, you know, growing up raised me to be who I am, have opportunities I've had. So I'm always trying to like help people out, you know. And
so how can we find you?
for sure, like on socials, studios at Record It Maps.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a good resource. And then, you know, my Instagram is Mike S. Willson with 2 L's in Wilson.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, whatever I can do to help and try to keep this community thriving, you know.
Hell yeah.
Next generation.
That's right. We're here.
Absolutely.